Special guest time on the That's So Cincinnati podcast. Here we are with the legend, the Hall of Famer, Marty Brennaman. Marty, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Burl. I feel like I'm in select company with you and Williams over here.
Well, depends what kind of select company, but and we have to start off by thanking you because you are with us. We're recording the day after May 14th, which was Pete Rose Day in Cincinnati. And as usual, the Reds put you to work. You couldn't just go and enjoy the game. You were integral part of the pregame festivities, out on the field interviewing those that played with Pete, played for Pete. Talk a little bit about that moment last night.
Well, every now and then they drag out the old war horse. He's been put to pasture, and they bring him back. And I thoroughly enjoyed it last night. It was an honor to be included in it because Pete and I were very close friends, and especially to be up there with Larkin and Eric Davis and George Foster. And Ken Griffey Sr. was supposed to have been with us, but and he had a medical problem getting here. He finally got here, but got here late, and thank God he's okay. It's always fun to reminisce with guys that, as you said, played with Pete or played for Pete. To hear their stories. I thought Larkin had a great story about the spikes and the glove.
Had you heard that before?
I'd heard it, but I'd forgotten about it. Hey, Jason, when you get to be almost 83, you forget a lot. Sometimes it's convenient. But I thought people can say what they want to about the Reds organization, but the one thing that they always do well is if there is a special event that they have to undertake, they always hit a home run, and I thought they did last night. I thought a lot of that had to do with Fawn Rose, who was, I thought, nothing short of brilliant in her comments about her dad and about the event. People have no idea how she took the bull by the horns with this whole event and told the people the way she felt like it should be presented. And she did a wonderful job. So it was great for me because I got a chance to see her. I got a chance to see little Pete and also Carolyn Rose, who I had not seen in decades. And visiting with those people was very important to me, and it was an honor to be a part of it.
And for those who don't remember, that would be Pete and Fawn's mom.
That's correct. Correct.
And the grandkids were there.
Yeah, everybody was there.
Son Ty, son you never really, you don't really hear about.
Kara and Tyler were the children of Carol Rose, Pete's second wife, and got a chance to see her also, which I had not seen in forever. And it was well done. I don't know that there was anything, as I reflect back upon it last night, going home and Amanda and I talking about it, whether there was anything that they missed. I don't think they missed a thing. I thought the club did a great job, and obviously, Pete Rose is as loved now as he was when he was alive, and will be that way for all time as long as a game of baseball is played. And I congratulate the fans for coming out in standing room only fashion.
No surprise on that.
No,
I mean they really came out last night.
Yeah, they did.
It was like opening day.
It was. That's
again.
Exactly right.
Now, prior to Pete's death, you said in many interviews that if he were to be inducted to the Hall of Fame, which starts with the process of being reinstituted into baseball, after his death, that would be one of the most tragic tales ever. And that's how it played out. And you have not been shy about your feelings on that.
Well, I think there are a lot of people who feel the same way I do. And the response to what I said by fans in this town is almost overwhelming, almost. And I sure didn't say it because I look for that kind of support. I said it because I believe it. And I'm going to mention a name that I know that Jason will recognize immediately, Terrence Moore. Terrence, for those who don't know, was raised pretty much here, went to Miami University, has lived in Atlanta forever, is a celebrated writer. He's just written a piece for Forbes magazine about the whole thing. He contacted me this morning. And the gist of the matter is, once again, my faith in Major League Baseball has been renewed, he said, because they have managed to do the right thing at the wrong time. And that's exactly the way I feel about it. I think that is much more succinctly put than my comments, because I'm basically and historically a bull in the china shop. And I just feel like they could have done it sooner than they did, and they could have done it while he was alive. It doesn't do him a damn bit of good because he's gone. Maybe it does for the family. And as I said before, and I'll reiterate it time and again, I have nothing to do with their decision, and I respect whatever they decide to do. But if I were that family, I'd let this whole thing play out. And if he was elected by the 16 members of the committee into the Hall of Fame and they were officially notified, at that point I would say thanks, but no thanks. I'm not interested. And I know for a fact that there's one member of the Rose family that feels the same way I do.
What do you think? Do you think ultimately, though, it's about the fans, and that they, with that in mind, they might bite their tongue and accept it?
I think the fans would accept it. Now, there would be a lot of fans that would not. But as I said, I think you could take a poll of baseball fans all over the country, not only here in Cincinnati, and they would overwhelmingly feel, whether he's officially in the Hall of Fame or not, he's a Hall of Fame player. And so it's a terrible situation to be in. I have never been a big Rob Manfred fan, and I just think he made a decision that I'm sure he felt would have been overwhelmingly accepted. And I think that he has found out now that there are a lot of people that are condemning him because he waited as long as he did, or he waited until Pete was gone. I think it was so transparent. It was sickeningly transparent that he dies in September, and 5 or 6 months later, they come out in grandiose fashion and say that we have taken him off the suspended list along with Shoeless Joe Jackson. That's another criminal situation that people don't think about when they talk about these circumstances, because Pete is a guy that most people can relate to. I'm just opposed to the whole way the whole thing was handled.
That said, the family pushed for this. They did. They pushed for him to continue on to do this.
They did. In fact, Fawn went to New York in December and met with Rob Manfred, and apparently she was overwhelmingly impressive to him because he has articulated that through people that work for him in New York in his office, that she was just wonderful. And I think it's hard to say it worked, because I don't know that we'll know, and I'm shocking because he's such a grandstander, that President Trump hasn't come out yet and taken credit for the fact that the suspension was lifted. I think we will know one day. Sometimes people say we'll never know. In his case, we will know, because he will pat himself on the back, which he does incessantly.
Well, kind of along those same lines, because it raises questions like, was Trump involved? Right. And also it raises questions of whether Manfred and the Hall of Fame had discussed all this ahead of time. And I guess so now, even though the initial reaction is like, okay, so the lifetime ban has been lifted, then that means the Hall of Fame can now he's now eligible for the Hall of Fame because the Hall of Fame put that rule in after he was banned.
Correct.
I guess the initial thought is like, okay, the ban's been lifted. He's a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. That's not necessarily the case now after
Certainly
you really
isn't.
step back and look at it. Are you of the mind that Major League Baseball and the Hall of Fame were all in connection on this whole thing, or that Rob Manfred operated in a silo without really being in contact with the Hall?
I think there was a lot of discussion among the parties that you just mentioned. I don't think there was something that he arbitrarily woke up one morning and said, based on his conversation with Fawn and how persuasive she might have been. And I think he had to deal with a lot of people, and he could not have allowed Jane Clark in Cooperstown to be caught by surprise in this thing. So, yes, I think there were a lot of people that were involved in this decision well ahead of it.
Sorry, I want to, because I think this is a big question people have. So it goes now. It's the Veterans Committee. Is that what it's called? Is it a Veterans Committee?
It's called the Classic Era Committee, which is they change all the names. It's the committee of 16 that will vote, and these are votes for players who excelled before 1980.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's this committee you're a member of the Hall of Fame. Do you have any?
None.
You have no say in who could be on that? Who does have the say in who could be one of those 16
that's a good
members?
question. Excuse me. They it's a cross section of people. I'll give you an example. Tim Kirchin was a member at one time.
Okay.
Who was a great writer and a broadcaster in the whole 9 yards. But there are people in different walks of life, but people who have some connection with baseball, or someone who, like Tim, was involved in more than just one sport. But they are all people that come from different walks of life that are involved in some way with the game of baseball and have great respect among the people across the country that are baseball fans. I don't know the makeup of it. I told someone yesterday, I feel like I ought to go back and just say, Google who are the members of the Classic Era Committee. And I'm sure it will tell you. You have to have 12 of the 16 votes say yes, or 75%. Anything less than that, then you're not going to get in, at least on that go around. So, and the thing is, now we have to wait until probably the fall of 27.
Right.
To find out whether he will be inducted into the Hall of Fame in the summer of 28. And that's where it stands right now, because they don't meet again until then.
Because that committee is in place as it is. It's not going to be.
I don't think that between now and then the change in personalities will come. I think it'll be the same people then that are now. I could be wrong.
So what I'm getting at is, could the deck be stacked against Pete? Or I don't know if it would go the other way, but I sense that it could go the way of being stacked against him if it is.
Not knowing anything, but that from a logical standpoint, and the position that baseball has taken about him for all these years, I don't think you can discount it as a possibility.
Well, one thing that's kind of lost in this discussion a lot of times, that it kind of popped up in the HBO documentary, and a lot of people were talking about this after the O'Brien book came out, is that Manfred sort of tried to deflect this to the Hall of Fame, where he wanted to separate the two, and they are separate, by saying his lifetime ban from baseball means he can't have anything to do with Major League Baseball in terms of coaching, being around the game, any capacity at all. But the Hall of Fame, at the end of the day, is a museum. It doesn't have anything to do with the operation of Major League Baseball. And if they wanted to, the Hall of Fame could have disconnected, what they had said was, if you're banned from baseball, you're not eligible for a Hall of Fame. They could have reversed that if they wanted to, and never did. So we're still looking at the same situation where the Hall of Fame can do what the Hall of Fame wants to do, regardless of whether he's reinstated into baseball.
Do you really believe that?
That's why I wanted to ask you.
I think it's laughable when the commissioner comes out and says, we have nothing to do with that. That's that Jane Forbes Clark and her people up in Cooperstown that run that Hall of Fame. We have nothing to do with that. And I laugh and I say, you've got to be stupid to think that this guy can come out and say that with a straight face, knowing that the kind of power that he has in baseball, all he's got to do is pick up the telephone and tell Jane Forbes Clark, this is the way we would like to see it handled. And it's going to be handled that way, because the Hall of Fame cannot afford any kind of split with Major League Baseball. And so
do you think that would have caused a split?
I think it would cause a major split. And I think the commissioner takes people for fools if they buy into what he says about that, because there's no way on God's earth that they don't have some influence. Now, in terms of the day-to-day operation and the monies that it costs to run the Baseball Hall of Fame, Major League Baseball probably has nothing to do with that. Or maybe they do. But at the same time, I would not have said that. That's just one of the many blunders I think that Rob Manfred has made along the way since he was the successor to Bud Selig back in 2015.
Well, let's transition into happier times.
We've covered this pretty well.
You have been talking about this a lot, so I really thank you for.
There's still a lot. There's still a lot.
There is
a lot of the story to
Jason's
unfold
right.
here.
You're right.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So I want to transition us between the discussion of Pete to the discussion of your career, which we have not checked in with you since the news that the newest addition to the bronze statues in front of Great American Ballpark will not be a member from the Grade 8 or the 90 World Series team or anybody that played the game, but the Hall of Fame broadcaster. Did that catch you off guard? Had there been any rumblings? Were people taking pictures of you at weird times at different angles to send off to the sculpture?
I'd be less than honest if I didn't say that I didn't think from time to time about that being a possibility one day. I mean, there are a number of baseball broadcasters, Harry Carey at Wrigley Field and Jack Buck in St. Louis and Ernie Harwell in Detroit. And there, Bob Uecker, he's got two of them, one inside the ballpark and one outside. So it was not unusual for me to think, and I never articulated it to anybody, that 46 years and the things that have come my way, fortunately, the Hall of Fame and et cetera, that it could happen. But I never seriously contemplated it, and it would have never created any angst or animosity on my part if it never happened. I mean, I just thought about it and went about my business. So I was stunned when it happened, and they got me down to the ballpark on a day under false circumstances to spring it on me in the location where the statue's going to be. And Amanda broke down and cried when she realized, and I thought, damn, this is a big deal here. When my wife cries, I cry more in a week than she does in a year. and I was stunned. I'm thrilled. I know Bench said it when he went in. Joe said it, Morgan, when he went in, and I'll say it as the third member of the group. It's the biggest thing that's ever happened to me. It's bigger than the Hall of Fame. And people are shocked when I say that. But had I not been accepted by the people in this town as a worthy successor to a guy who needs no introduction in Al Michaels, all the rest of this would never have happened for me. So coming into what I said earlier about this being the most provincial city on God's green earth, and it is.
Indeed.
If I had not been accepted, it would have never happened. So it's going to be the biggest thing that's ever happened for me and happened for my family.
Well, what I want to do is, since we were talking about Pete, is play the call that you gave when Pete hit 4,192. And we'll listen to that together. And then I want you to just, first thing that comes in your mind after hearing that, after all these years, reflect on that moment, because clearly it's what defined Pete as a hands-down Hall of Famer, obviously being the hit king. But also, we've got some Hall of Fame broadcast happening here too. So I'm going to play it, and I just want you to react to it.
He levels it down a couple of times. Shao kicks and he fires. Rose swings. There it is! There it is! Get out! Get out! All right! Hit number 4192. A line drive single into left center field. A clean base hit. And it is pandemonium here at Riverfront Stadium.
Well, there's a lot of stories behind that deal.
Let's go.
Let me lead it up to the actual call. The only time that in the 31 years that he and I worked together, Joe Nuxall, we were both selfish enough to admit that we wanted the call. We end a series in Chicago on a Sunday afternoon before coming home. And it was rainy, and there was even a question of whether the game was going to be played. And they finally elected to play it. He gets a hit early in the game. That ties Cobb's record. And so I'm counting the innings, and I'm counting when the next at-bat's going to come. And I think this was a leadoff base hit in the first inning. And then, he'll come up again in the third or the fourth. That's Joe's innings. And then it looked like it was working in his favor. So sure enough, in the seventh inning, he came to the plate, and he hit a ground ball deep into the hole at shortstop. In fact, and had it not been for the guy playing shortstop, Pete would have beat it out for a base hit. Sean Dunston had the greatest arm of any shortstop in baseball at that time, very similar to Ellie De La Cruz today. And he went into the hole on the edge of the outfield grass, backhanded the ball, came up throwing, and he got Pete by a half a step. That would have been an infield hit to break the record. And then we come home and play the opening game of the San Diego series. 30-plus thousand people showed up. Shockingly, it was not sold out. And he didn't get the hit. I think he went 0 for 4. And then came inning number 1 of game number 3 or 2 in the series. And he gets a hit off of Shao, and Joe was screaming, "Get down, get down, get down." And it did, right? Played on a hot, clean hit because Carmelo Martinez played it on the big AstroTurf bounce. And then, a series of things happened. Little Pete came out and hugged his dad. Tommy Helms, who was, God rest his soul, just recently passed away, who was also a dear friend of mine. And he was coaching first, and he stepped over the line and hugged Pete. Steve Garvey, who is in town as we speak, who I'll be with tonight at a function, he congratulated Pete. And the greatest one was Bobby Brown, who was an extra outfielder, was not even in the lineup that night, burst out of the third base dugout and raced all the way to first base to congratulate Pete. And Pete broke down and cried, which was front page news in the Enquirer, or if it wasn't, it should have been, because he never cried. That's the only time in the half century that I knew him that I saw him shed a tear. And he was thinking about his dad. Now, God rest him, Joe Nuxall was embarrassed every time anybody ever brought up the hit because of his emotions overtaking him and blocking out the early portion of my call. It didn't make a bit of difference to me because, and I would constantly tell him, Joe, you got to stop beating yourself over the head about this. It doesn't bother me. That was the essence of our relationship. It was the essence of our relationship personally, the essence professionally in the booth. So it didn't bother me one bit. In fact, I think when you listen to it, it kind of adds to it because people knew how emotional Joe was. I used to tell Joe, you can cry door openings of the sun coming up. I said, I've never seen a man that could cry like you can. As I have found out over the years, it's very easy for me to do that today. I didn't think it was macho enough that a man could shed a tear. I think it's maybe the most macho thing that a man can do. But they're the stories behind it. I was thrilled to death that I had the call because it was the chronicling, for want of a better word, of an event that will never be equaled again because nobody will ever break that record. And Pete, God bless him, had one of the great, always had one of the, I heard him say it thousands of times and laughed every time when someone would say to him, you think anybody ever challenged your record? And he'd say, well, I don't know, maybe. He said, all they got to do is get 200 plus hits 20 years in a row. that summed it up. I mean, that took care of it, as only he could say it. And he would say that without fail every time anybody posed that question to him.
Remember Pete's rat tail? He had that rat tail. Remember that?
Yeah.
Larry Herms and I were talking about that last night.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, some things age well and others do not.
That's exactly right.
Yep. One of the greatest moments in baseball, and we were reminded of the rat tail as well.
Because it was prominent, right? You know,
That's right. It totally was.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I did not know that Joe beat himself up over that.
Oh, terribly.
Oh, that's
terribly. I mean, it was painful when somebody would bring it up and he and I were together. And I'm sure even if I was not standing there, he would have reacted to it exactly the way he did. And every time I'd have to say, Joe, stop. It doesn't bother me. I don't care, you know.
In some ways, it's Marty and Joe, right? Yeah, I know you alternated innings, but on that call, we got to hear you,
both
but also the enthusiasm of
right.
Joe.
Exactly.
You know, that like,
yeah.
Because I don't think anybody that listens to this now or listened to it back then, I'm amused by it.
Yeah.
You know, when you listen to it, it's like, is Marty going to be able to get a word in edgewise here? But you did, you know,
it all worked.
It all worked, and it just makes it that, you know, it's hard to say Marty without Joe afterwards.
You know,
right?
You mentioned the relationship. We used to get mail addressed to us, Marty and Joe, Cincinnati, Ohio. Honest to God.
And it would find its
I ran
way.
into the local postmaster. This is back in 1978 or 9, during Christmas one time on the streets downtown. And I said, what the heck? I said, that's not legal. He said, are you kidding me? He said, there ain't no other Marty and Joe anywhere in this town but you and him. He said, so we just send it on to the, and I thought that's the time that I felt like maybe we're doing something right as a partnership. And it was a partnership in every sense of the word. It really was.
I mean, bingo. And that's what made that call with him. It's not like you'd been working together for 2 years and you guys are partner for 2 years, and then he drops that in there.
Yeah.
And that to me made it extra special.
It did. And he was such a sensitive guy. People have no idea. And when I say he could cry, he would, the night that Johnny Bench, they had Johnny Bench night, and they get beat by Houston 5-1. And the only run the Reds scored was a home run by Bench, and Joe had the call, and Joe broke down and cried. I mean, he was just an emotional person like that, which I had incredible respect for, and I rarely ever saw his temper. I saw it once, and it was memorable.
Was it directed at you?
No. You want to tell that story? It's a good story.
Let's hear it.
We're playing a game at home, 9th inning, Reds have the lead, and that was back when you did the Star of the Game show. So he'd leave early if we had a good enough lead. You may have heard this one, Jason.
I think I wrote about it.
You might have. He got up in the top of the 9th before the first pitch was thrown to go downstairs and get set up in the dugout. And he got on the elevator. It was on the 5th floor at Riverfront to go all the way down to the bottom. And Eleanor Klazewski was on the elevator. Eleanor was about this high. And they had one of the great love affairs I've ever been involved, ever seen in my life, she and Ted. And she and Joe and the elevator operator. And they start down, and the elevator stops on the 3rd floor. 3 young guys are standing there. And they start into the elevator. Didn't say anything, and the elevator operator did not recognize them. And you know, Lauren, and you know how it is. If you're down at a venue like this across the street, or the football stadium, or the baseball, you don't have to show your identification because they know you. They see you day in and day out. This guy had never seen these people before, so he stopped them and he said, "Can I see some credential?" And the lead guy said, "We don't have any." And he said, "Well, you can't ride this elevator." He said, "This guy said, I'm Paul Brown's son." And the elevator operator, elderly gentleman, I can use that word now because I wasn't elderly then. He was very nice and politically correct, and he said, "Well, that's fine," but he said, "At the same time, I have rules that I have to abide by, and you can't get on." The conversation continued. Joe's standing there with his briefcase in one hand, his scorebook in the other. And finally he says, "Joe, look, you guys don't have the proper credentials. Just back up." And this guy looked at Joe and said, "Who in the hell are you?" That still didn't bother Joe. He said, "It makes no difference who I am. Just back up because we've got business to attend to." And the doors were closing. Guy had terrible timing. The doors were closing, and the guy looked at Joe and said, "You SOB." And Joe had time to drop both hands to get rid of what he had and reach in and separate. And he grabbed the guy right by the collar. And Eleanor said, "As God is my witness, he had enough strength to lift this guy so his feet were not firmly planted on the floor." And he said, "I told you to get out. And I'm going to tell you one more time." And he just threw him out of the elevator, and that was it.
Don't mess with Joe.
No, I did not write about that one. I wrote about the one. Remember when him and Dave Stewart got into it?
Yeah.
And it was a post-game show thing or something.
Yeah.
I think
I forgot about
Didn't
that.
Dave Stewart come after him in the tunnel, or it was at Riverfront?
I don't know. It would have been at Riverfront. Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember that.
Joe was giving him
and Dave Stewart was a volatile guy too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was with the Milwaukee. He was like the Milwaukee pitching coach.
Yeah,
at that point or something. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a story. The one you just told.
Well, thinking of the old left-hander, it made me think that obviously your trademark, this one belongs to the Reds, will never be matched. Tied to you in this city forever. And then, of course, the old left-hander rounding third and heading for home. There has been no other broadcaster that has followed either you or Joe that has come close to having anything that signature that becomes tied to this. Do you think in this current media landscape where everything is so, diluted, atomized almost, that a broadcaster has a chance of making that big of an impact? Because you can watch the game so many different ways. You can stream it. There's so many different casts, but you're talking about a time when, if you were listening to the Reds on the radio, or if you wanted to follow the Reds, you could either listen to the radio or watch the TV broadcast. Maybe. Have we left that era where guys like you make such an impact?
Yeah, and that's not any credit to me. It's rather a different era. For one thing, TV, I think, is basically taken over radio because the preponderance of games that virtually every game is on now. Back in the day, when I came here, the Reds did 25 games a year. That's it on Channel 5. Now they do almost every single game, and most every other club does the same thing. So this has always been a radio town, and it may still be today, but maybe not nearly to the extent that it used to be. The other thing is, and I hate to say this because I think it's an embarrassment to my profession, I don't think you have the guys doing games today that are the ilk of Vin Scully and Jack Buck and Ernie Harwell and people like that. And on top of that, there's tremendous pressure on guys doing games today who have to measure every single word that comes out of their mouth for fear of reprisal from people who can cost them their jobs if they say something that they don't like. I was fortunate because somebody allowed me to go too long, and the longevity set in this town and the following set in. And I'm sure that the ownership of this club had oftentimes gritted their teeth at some of the things that I said. But quite honestly, and again, I'm not patting myself on the back because it would have happened to anybody who had been around as long as I had and had the style that I had. There was not really a whole lot they could do about it. There were a couple of times when I met with them because of something that they got mad because I referred to Tony La Russa as Mr. Baseball. They didn't like that. They got mad because I referred to Scott Boras as the Antichrist because they had to do business with him and he didn't like it. And I really love that because it came directly from his people. They want you talk to your guy and tell him to stop calling Scott. I love that. So, but yeah, I just don't think that when I listen to guys today, the other part of it is there are guys working at the network level who are absolutely horrible. And that's simply because the Jim Nances of the world and the Al Michaels of the world and the Bob Costas of the world are Jim Nance was going to hang around now to do just the Masters golf tournament. That's it. Al is on the way out and all voluntarily. Costas is the same way. The networks are never going to pay guys the kind of money they paid those guys. Now they can get guys on the cheap because their desire is to work for a network. If I get a job working for a network, I've died and gone to heaven. And so the talent level, I don't think, is nearly what it used to be.
I think I've thought a lot about this just because I'm a huge listener to radio, Reds on the radio, and it's just there's something about having it on the garage and you know, you're milling around the house or whatever. But you and I talked several months ago now, back in it was after Pete died, because you were gracious enough to do the forward for the Enquirer's
great book, by
Pete
the
Rose
way.
book.
You guys did a good job.
And you and I remember you and I we started talking about other stuff, and I don't know how we got on it, but I said something like, I was like, Marty, I listened to it a lot and I think about it, like, you wouldn't have been hired today with your style.
No way.
Like,
there is
crazy to think that.
Not a single chance in the world. But my style evolved. I was a cheerleader when I came here.
Yeah,
I referred to the Reds as we, And my good friend, who I'm sure you know, Mark Wicker, who I talk to all the time, says that famous French word meaning yes. You don't say that anymore. I said, I haven't said that since a day in 1976 when Jack Billingham, after the Reds beat the Braves 25-3, and Jack pitched. And I said, boy, that was a great game we had last night. And Jack said, how many hits did you get? How many people did you get out? That was a defining moment in my career because I never used that word again. But you're right. A guy like me could not get hired today. No question.
It's amazing.
But also, you were talking about broadcasters gunning for those big network jobs. You were unique, I think, and one of the reasons you talked about this place being provincial and having to embrace you. The town did embrace you, but you embraced the town as well, because I'm sure you had opportunities to go to a top 3 market or go get that network job. Hell, you probably had offers you turned down, but I'm sure you were in discussions. What was if you don't mind sharing, what was the biggest temptation you had to leave? The job that was in discussion that you might have left for?
The one I took most seriously?
Yeah.
Boston Red Sox. Really tough. Really that close.
How close? Did they have a contract in front of you?
I've got a contract written on legal pad paper under glass in my baseball room at home. There was a 5-year contract that the owner of the radio station, who, by the way, was a head of Republic Broadcasting, that owned the flagship station in Boston. He also owned WLW Radio, a guy named Joe Scallon. And Joe called me in one night after we did our Hot Stove League program. And he said, look, I want to make you an offer to come to Boston and do the Red Sox game. At that time, the Reds were this is when Dick Wagner ran the ball club, and Dick and I were like this all the time. And he would not let me do a full schedule of college basketball. He felt like if you're going to do Reds baseball, that's the only thing you're going to do. And so people would say, we can't hire you if you're going to do the regular season. And now we go into the ACC tournament, and I worked in the ACC later. If you got to bail because you got to be in spring training, so they wouldn't hire you. And that was a constant source of irritation with me because people wanted me to work. And Joe Scallon said, look, I'll give you the freedom to do anything you want to do, even if it conflicts with spring training with the Red Sox and the whole 9 yards. He wrote me a 5-year contract for a lot of money. And I came close. Ted Williams was my favorite player of all time. And to think that I'd be working at Fenway Park where he played in the whole 9 yards. But then at the end of the day, I simply said, no, I can't leave here. I love this town too much.
That wasn't too far into your time here then.
No, it was in 1982, I think, 81 or 82.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd been around here 5 years, I think. But I had offers to go to the Yankees, both Chicago franchises. In fact, the job that I turned down in Chicago because I was under contract, Tom Brennaman got.
They got a Brennaman one way or the other.
They sure did. And so San Francisco Giants. So I had some pretty good clubs that talked to me about going to work for them, but that's the only one that I rather ever seriously considered. And guys, in my business, it's such a transient business because everybody thinks the grass is always greener. And thank God I never got into this business to make all the money in the world, and I made a lot of money. But this living here was more important to me than any amount of money that I could make because my kids were raised here. This town has everything. I don't know what you could want that this town doesn't have. Amanda and I are patrons.
More sunshine, a beach.
Well, that they can have in the wintertime. I agree with that. Yes. But I mean, we're patrons of the Broadway series. We go religiously to shows, and I just think this town is just incredibly special. I really do.
So you stayed.
Thank God. I was the smartest thing I ever did, next to marrying Amanda Brennaman.
I'm glad you got that in there. Well, Marty, we can't thank you enough for coming in. So many great memories. Just listening to you, I was thinking about things that, I took for granted, like and they're gone, like the banana phone. I know you hated that at the end, but like, you,
are we going there?
There's something yeah, I grew very, very disenchanted with the banana phone.
I know.
That call with Adam from Milwaukee.
It was the best.
Still a classic.
I know it.
All right, now you know. For those who don't know, you have to tell the Adam from Milwaukee
Go ahead,
story.
Yeah,
you tell it.
It was a rain. Oh, it was banana phone, rain delay.
So let me set the stage. Now, during rain delays, they cut to some, like I think they go to Jim Day podcasts or something like that.
Yeah.
Basically, the broadcast booth is off the hook. Not back in your day.
No, back in those days, we had to fill every bit of time.
Fill that
every
time
single bit
during
of
the
time.
rain delay.
Yeah.
And so somehow it evolved to you taking calls on a phone that was actually a banana.
It was. It was a
Chiquita banana.
Yeah.
And listeners would call in, and you guys would just kind of became talk radio a little bit.
Right.
And so that was happening. So I've set the stage. And
Go
then
ahead, Jason.
Were you in Milwaukee? You were in Milwaukee, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Adam from Milwaukee calls.
In Milwaukee. This have been before they built the new stadium then?
No. It was a new stadium.
Get to the damn story.
Oh, yeah. It was a new stadium. It was not the old one.
Wait, so then how was there a rain
I'm
delay?
sorry. No, you're right. It was the old ballpark. It was the last year.
Or was it here we were playing Milwaukee?
I think it was up there. It was at Milwaukee County Stadium.
Okay. It was Adam Dunn.
Yeah, it was.
Adam Dunn calls you from the clubhouse.
The clubhouse.
Hey, Marty. Yes, Adam. And you're just playing right to it. And at one point, does he say, "Are you wearing a shirt?" Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And
Joe got all bent out of shape.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yeah. Joe didn't like it at all. In fact, let me take you off that, because one night Jose Rio called. And this was at this was the riverfront. And we were at home. He's calling from the Reds clubhouse. And I mean, he's Latin American, and his accent was as thick as it. I mean, it was. And
it was recognizable around
absolutely.
here. Yeah.
He called because for a period of time, Joe and I had a potato chip out called Marty and Joe's Potato Chips. It was a company in Urbana, Ohio. It was a mom and pop. The potato chips were really good. And they had our picture on the front of it. And Rijo calls, and he identifies himself as somebody. I knew immediately who it was. And he told Joe, he said, the potato chips are too greasy. And Joe was destroyed. I mean, he was legitimately upset.
Oh, he was ticked.
Oh, he went after him on the telephone. And then finally we got him off. I said, Joe, God almighty. I said, that's Jose Rijo that called. He said, I don't care who it was. He said, he's talking about greasy potatoes. I said, Joe, they were. But I said that had added to the flavor. Oh, Rio had him going, boy. I'll tell you, it was funny. But those guys had Dunn called and said, you have a shirt on.
And he just kept going. He kept asking you weird questions. He was talking really slow.
Yeah.
And then what you wrapped it up by saying, don't you have a game to get ready for? Or something?
That's right. That's the only thing I said that gave it away.
Yeah.
Well,
Marty Brennaman.
That's right.
Another one.
That's right. Yeah. Well, so many good
in
memories.
the good days, the banana phone was fun.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
It was. We had some good times on the banana phone.
Yeah.
It's things like that. And,
Yes.
but it got to the point where you'd have college kids over at UC or Xavier or wherever, and they were drinking beer all night long, and then comes a rain delay. And let's call Marty and Joe. And they'd call, and you could hear the feedback because they had the volume of the radio up too loud. And I'd go home, and Amanda said, you cannot talk to fans the way you talk to them on the radio.
Oh, yes, you can. That's what made it great.
She got mad. She said, you have to show them more respect. I said, not these clowns I'm dealing with now. I mean, God almighty.
Yeah. My brother and I used to keep track of the things you said that made us laugh and had a running list. I wish we would have saved it.
I tell people all the time.
With an ironing board.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, they say, we used to listen to you religiously. I said, you people listen because, one, there were two left-handers doing the game, and because of that, you never know what might come out of one of their mouths during the course of a broadcast. But we had a great time, boy, I'll tell you.
What a run.
Yeah, it was great.
Well, before we let you go, I'm fascinated by the process, because it'll never happen to me, of having someone make a statue of you. Like, I have this vision of you, like, standing, posing, and somebody chiseling away like they do on the cartoons, but I'm guessing it's not quite the
It's going to
process
be me
these days.
seated with a microphone and headphones. Mike Suchia, who's the guy that does this, he's an artist if there ever was one. In fact, his work on these existing bronze statues there have created a situation for him now where he does all the plaques for the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow.
He does them all. And so we're going to get with him. He's in the process of doing it now, but I sat for a while at the ballpark in the radio booth one day, and they have some type of scan that's connected to doing bronze work like this. And they scan me from the front, they scan me from the back, and we will have a say, we meaning Amanda and me. And what he does, Tom Suchia, his brother's Mike, what he does, which I really find interesting, is that he will very discreetly incorporate, Marty Loves Amanda or something.
Oh, a little Easter egg going on.
They can, if you don't know they're there, it's hard to find them. And he's going to give us an opportunity to do some of that. And the location is special for me because it's going to be up against a wall of the Reds office building. And up there now is a mural, a big baseball mural, and below that is the plaque that, like you see in any building that's been built, about who the builder was and who was on the Hamilton County Commission and all that stuff. They're going to move that and put mine right up against that wall, and it's right by the biggest gate in the ballpark where 70% of the people, they tell me, come in to see games. And on one side will be Joe Morgan, on the other side will be Pete. And they were my two guys. So I could not have asked for a better location. And that'll probably be, as I think about it, the most emotional day of my life because of the fact that I never dreamed that would ever happen. And for a guy who had no athletic ability, he was born and raised in a very, very average household where both parents worked, and in Portsmouth, Virginia. This is a big deal for me. It's a big deal.
Well, I want to be at the dedication. Jason will be there because I'll assign him to go.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that. That's kind of you. That's kind of you.
I have to ask, too, what era Marty Brennaman will this statue depict?
You've
because we've got several.
Actually, you only got two.
Really?
You got the Marty with hair and the Marty without hair.
Well, I mean, there's all
poofy hair.
That's right.
There's
the post dragonfly.
There's like early career Marty trying to be professional. Then you've got 70s Marty where the hair got poofy. The poofy haired fancy boy moniker was born.
You know who gave me that?
It had to be Joe.
Tim Sullivan.
What? Our Tim Sullivan? That's
he
news
wrote
to
that
me.
in a column.
Oh, he's another guy that would text me. And he had a nickname for some woman in Middletown, Ohio, and who was a high society woman. And he would always address it to the poofy-haired fancy boy. But go ahead.
Former Enquirer columnist Tim Sullivan. Boy, well, I'm learning a lot today. So we're talking that era. Your collar was so big you could probably hang glide with it, and you were a fashion icon in the late 70s.
I dressed up all the time.
Yes. Then there's then we get to Marty
Sweaters.
the sweaters, the Cosby sweater era.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That lasted a long time.
Now I would say
it did.
I would
Cost me a lot of money, too.
you're in your fancy shirt era, because I have to tell you, this is a small town and media circles are even smaller, right? But I was at an event. In fact, it was Paul Doherty's retirement that we had at the Boathouse. And I don't have many fancy shirts, but I got a few. So I'm wearing one of my fancy shirts, the kind that's you.
Yeah, that's right. Roll over.
You roll the collar or the cuff up, and it's got different fabric on the cuff, It might have had some bejeweling in the back or whatever. And Karen Forgas popped in, and she's like, "Did you get that shirt from Marty Brennaman?" I took it as a compliment.
I still have them all.
I bet.
I can't imagine how many I have, and I wear them occasionally now, but not very much because I live in a pair of jeans, and most often than not sneakers. I changed last night. I had to clean up last night because I had loafers on with no socks on, and I like the way I am now. I mean,
So which era statue will we see?
That as far as the clothing is concerned, I have no idea. But that's a topic that will come up, I'm sure.
Okay.
I didn't even
so you
think
haven't
about
decided
that.
yet if it's going to be the poofy haired?
No, it's going to be this.
It's going to be clean cut.
Oh, absolutely.
High and tight Marty.
It'll be like
right.
this.
Okay.
My life became. I was liberated when I had my head shaved because I got rid of my hairspray and my hair dryer and the whole 9 yards.
And what another iconic Marty moment when you cut your hair? Because it wasn't just you decided to get a haircut, but
I lost a bet with Chris Spire, who was Dusty Baker's bench coach in May. They just finished winning sweeping a series here, and we were on a Delta charter waiting while the luggage was being loaded, and he and I were standing up in the aisle at plane talking, and he said, this club, the way it's playing, has got a chance to win 10 games in a row. I said, no, it doesn't. He said, why would you say that? I said, because it doesn't consistently hit enough or pitch enough. So fast forward to the end of July, I have no more recollection of that conversation of the man in the moon. We go into Denver, and the Reds had won 7 in a row. They win Friday night. They win Saturday night. Now we're leaving Sunday to come home. Amanda's with me, and I go to the ballpark that morning, and I walk in the clubhouse, and it looks like New Year's Eve. And I'm standing there with a perplexed look on my face, and Spire walked up, and he observed me, and he said, You don't remember, do you? I said, what the heck's going on in here? He said, you don't remember. I said, no, I don't. What are you talking about? He said, let me take you back to May when we were standing on a plane talking about how well this guy. I said, stop. He said, you remember what I asked you? I said, yeah. You asked me if they won 10 in a row, would I shave my head? And I said, yes. He said, you going to do the moral, ethical thing here? I said, absolutely, I am. And then it happened the following Friday night, and I was introduced to Dragonfly, which was one of the greatest events in my life. And these poor children who know nothing but pain, and I have a hard time understanding it. I'm not the most religious person in the world, but I just can't imagine why a young child knows nothing but pain and agony. And some are lucky enough to overcome it and look back on it. Others don't make it. But my connection with them was a great thing for me, and so it was the biggest night of my life in that ballpark that had nothing directly to do with the game of baseball or my broadcasting.
Well, I don't think many people remember that you lost a bet. I think they remember that moment where you turned it into a fundraiser, big awareness for that.
And the funny thing is, when I'm getting my head shaved, Amanda's standing there, and I had my guy come and cut my hair because Matt Latos wanted to do it. And I said,
I was going to say, there were probably people lined up wanting to cut your hair.
Hell will freeze over before you get a chance to
Matt
touch
Latos.
my head, because I wasn't a big fan of his either. And they got a certain point, my barber did, and Amanda said, that's it right there. And I said, that's what? She said, that's where you're going to, that's how you're going to look for the rest of your life. And since the road to matrimonial bliss has been a very expensive one for me. And thank God for her. And when she said it, it's a gospel, pal.
And that's how it looks to this day.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, Marty Brennaman, thank you for joining us. We know how busy you are. We're looking forward to that moment where you are immortalized in bronze coming up. And again, thanks for being with us today.
Well, you two guys are special guys for me. I like both of you a bunch, and Jason and I give each other a lot of crap because we differ on certain things, and I appreciate that. I'm a big fan of yours and what you've done here, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, that means a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks.